Before we start the talk, a brief announcement. Of the 3 meeting times, morning, afternoon, and evening, the fewest people go to the afternoon meetings for various reasons. And then it happens that in the evening people are left over. I do have to stop meetings at 9 o'clock or around 9. So if you intend to take your meetings, which is up to each one, tomorrow and the day after. No. What is today? Today is Sunday. Today and tomorrow. Because on Tuesday there will not be afternoon meetings. But today and tomorrow, if you want to be sure to have a meeting, then it may be good to also use the afternoon, at least a few people. More. I've had, after 3, there have not been any people recently. This is day 8 of the June 96 10-day retreat in Springwater. The topic for today is separation. It has come up in many meetings. For some in the very first meeting. This seemingly abiding sense of separate self, separate individual, separate personality, separate me, apart from others. Apart from nature. Apart from the whole. And people are asking, what exactly is this sense of separation? And even though this is what we feel and suffer from the most, yet by talking so much about it or using these concepts in books and talks, one becomes used to the concept and then doesn't know anymore what does it really mean. And very often when a discussion or a dialogue comes up about separation, we try to define it abstractly, what separation is for me, or how it was maybe in the past when there wasn't separation, or how it should be to feel non-separated. Again, it brings up how much we dwell in ideas about things and can suffer from the idea as much as from the actuality. Because we don't only suffer from the idea of separation, there's a very strong tendency in us wanting to be different from others, being invested in that difference, and feeling anxious or hurt, upset, if we hear that we're not separate, that we're all of one humankind, all of one consciousness, of one ground. Something irks us in that, because we have pride and attachment to our separate selves. That is, after all, what our story life is founded upon. And as we have pointed out many times in this retreat, and we've been able to see for ourselves, with the attachment to the story life goes a lot of emotionality, pleasant feelings, ecstatic feelings, depressed feelings, angry or anxious feelings. So real what the body produces in feelings and tensions. Sensations is so palpable that it lends seeming truth to our story about ourselves. And we're not just attached to the idea of our past, present, and future life as lined up in remembrances and woodpeckers. But we're attached to the feelings that go with it, used to them, addicted to them. This is none. You can do it better than I can. Is he separate? Does he feel separate from other woodpeckers? There's this lovely cartoon, I've mentioned it in other talks. Two bird watchers with a book in front of their eyes, but every once in a while a glimpse on the tree where there's a woodpecker, identifying, reading about it. You see a little bird sketch in that open book, and the woodpecker in the next frame flies over and looks at the book and flies back to his wife and says, "Hey, we are woodpeckers." Or take a tree, these beautiful trees. We've had this gentle breeze, all the leaves fluttering and trembling in the light. Do the leaves feel that they're separate from each other? Leaves on one branch feel themselves as the southwestern branch as opposed to the northeastern branch. Each leaf, there's probably no two leaves completely the same, as there are no two human beings completely alike, physiologically, anatomically, psychologically. And yet, all the leaves are of the same tree. Well, they're a little bit bigger than the others, a little bit glossier, a little crumpled early. Some of them infected with insect bites, carrying little bubbles on them in which larvae grow. Maybe some of them enclosed by a caterpillar tent, eaten up alive. And yet all of the same tree, of the same soil, the same earth, and sky and rain and sunshine. You remember these early inspiring, sort of deeply spiritually touching, if you will, pictures taken by astronauts of the Earth. And the astronauts also deeply touched by seeing this one blue Earth. From enough distance, the differences don't count, even though they're there on the surface. And yet, at the same time, not to deny or wash over these felt investments in our separate individuality. to feel it as it manifests itself. People ask me, how am I to feel this separation? And it may still be a little bit of a heady puzzle, because separation manifests all the time in our surface interrelationships with each other and with things. So encapsulated in what I want for myself, so taken up by it. The whole capsule filled with my needs and my wants, my fears, my suffering, my life history, the importance of it, and the investments and feelings of energy that arise out of this importance. This human organism is an addictable organism, wanting more of the same. Once there is getting used to it, and that happens very quickly. So not to underestimate the tremendous power of habit, habitual addictions to our thoughts and feelings, and the withdrawal tremblings, if that is pulled into question, what we are addicted to or accustomed and used to, have come to rely on for our pseudo-security. So, not to try to solve the question, what is separation, intellectually. Although this is often the first step, first time maybe one hears about it, that there is no separation, that it is all illusion, memory, idea, and attachment to the ideas and their feelings. At first, we may think about it and say, well, yes, it's true, we are connected. And that picture of the earth, that makes sense. The metaphor of the tree makes sense. And yet it is an intellectual understanding which may be more becoming to our organism and its relationships with others than the intellectual conviction that we're all separate. Because ideas lead to action. Hostile action, action of prejudice. Although sometimes the prejudices that get programmed into the organism from early on through the environment, parents, peers, teachers, are deeper than the idea, pleasant or agreeable, though it may be that we're all one. The prejudice lies deeper, because connected with prejudice is fear of the others, the other group, people who look different, different hair, different skin color, different faces, eyes. Maybe there is something genetically inherent for human beings to flock together and be afraid of different looking ones. I don't know. I believe that in a few cases where children grow up without any prejudice on the part of parents or peers about race, intermingle very freely with each other. Even where there are prejudices, Kyle used to be all his professional life of principling. He was in inner city schools, transferred from one to another. He was good at it. Had no prejudice. And was very much fought for that by both white and black parents, each one feeling that he was giving preference to the other race. And the Board of Education, to whom irate parents would complain. he says the least problem was among the kids themselves. But he could see the heavy weight of racial politics upon the kids. So, are we born with it? Does it come from the outside, imbibed by osmosis that different is inferior, same is superior? Then, of course, all our drive to be, our yearning to be superior and looking for things one can attach to, one's group. Amazing. And almost as old as humankind. Although it is said that in the very early Stone Age years, there was less of that and more peaceful living together of human beings. Maybe yet not as much thinking developed about ourselves and each other. More concern about surviving. So how am I to watch separation? This question which comes up for so many of us. One person mentioning in sitting at times, there's just a crying out, I am. To watch it more closely, not immediately explain it, analyze it, have all kinds of reasons for it due to what one has learned and read, spiritual books, otherwise. But to watch where we watch least, in our moment-to-moment trivial encounters. Yes, they are just full of wisdom about ourselves and our feelings of enclosure or self-defense. Self-defense when someone says something that runs counter to what I believe, or does something that doesn't go along with the way I think things ought to be done. And without any awareness, full of inattention, running along with these feelings repetitively. And the agitations they arouse in us and each other. Fighting each other, correcting each other, and also making peace with each other, which often is not a true peace of no separation, but I can't afford to get along without you loving me or liking me. I almost lost you, we almost lost each other, so let's make up here. There's a fear there of not being liked anymore. And a lot of our make-ups have that as their main basis. Feels wonderful, but then it crashes again very quickly. Because it's not clear how much we cling to my way and the investment in winning, the fear or hatred of losing to someone else. The urge to dominate each other. And hating to submit to someone else because it's immediately accompanied by comment. Why should she have her way? Why should I always give in? And such headlines incite to agitation. Giving in doesn't incite at all. It's an easy way of getting along, particularly in matters where it doesn't matter. Most of them don't. But once the headlines and editorials are going, then we're aroused to defense or self-assertion. guarding our own, whatever that may be. And also sort of aligning together with others who agree with us, seeking allies, we've called it in the past. Seeking allies to help us unite in our needs and wants and opinions and positions against the other or those others who also unite with some people. So we don't stand alone. So the manifestation of feelings of separation abound in our moment-to-moment living. There's no lack of them. If we but begin to pay attention to it a little bit more intelligently, openly, spaciously. Instant defense is not intelligence and openness, but instant defense, now that we talk about it, and maybe recall it in memory, may come into view and be questioned. What am I defending right now? Not, I have a right to defend because I feel threatened. Don't talk to me about attention right now, some other time. And then talking with each other, not just for the sake of reaching some kind of adjustment. In the deepest sense, can we both come to this fullness of realization of what this self is, this ego, this me, which seems to run this life, and has been running it since early days, since it developed, strengthened with the help of other egos. But see, ego, the word already sounds so loaded. I'm not saying it judgmentally. Because the moment there's judgment, the vision is already blurred and tinted. It's a fact that there is an accumulation. We've called it the network. Somebody told me today that's an easier way of looking at it, and I don't feel so guilty for it. So identified as a network operating in each human being of memories and emotions, sensations, defense, wanting, fearing. And that becomes with other networks an internet of egos. We're all on the internet, whether we know it or not. And no one is guilty for it. That's part of the internet, or the individual networks. I say individual here because each self-centered network of thoughts, remembrances, projections, storyline, the whole thing is a little bit different, a little bit shaded, a little bit more of this and less of that than someone else's. But it has developed, unfolded, been programmed by itself. You could say, well, this one did it and that one, but what made this and that one do it? But his or her network of influences and past conditionings, prejudices. And characteristic of pure network living is the absence of attention. The moment attention dawns and interest, to find out more about it and be aware as agitation starts mobilizing and taking a hold of the body and mind, to wonder what's going on. Maybe at the moment of confrontation or being involved in some situation, there isn't the space and silence and time to look. It's come up a lot of times, people asking, where, when I get furious, is the space to look? But attention can dawn instantly. It doesn't need anything. It's there, actually. It's only overlaid by all of this networking, so that the energy is now running in the network rather than gathered quietly, openly, in awareness. So it's no impossibility at all for a spark of awareness to be there in the midst of rolling anger. I think it happened recently here in a meeting. Someone coming to a meeting said, I'm so angry. And then we just spent quiet time looking, allowing that space and presence, the energy to gather, not just in this desire, and the desire to release was felt by the person. I want to go with it. Body yearns for the pleasure of release. But it's also possible to not go with that pleasure of release, fed by headlines, I have a right to be angry, this is justified anger. I was treated unfairly. And it's okay for a human being to right the wrong. These headlines are not conducive to being with what's going on right now. In more spaciousness, more light, more silence. So, what first of all has to dawn is realizing that there is something to look at in our moment-to-moment relationships. Not to just take all of that for granted, or for impossible to watch, or for being natural, human nature, and so forth. Whether it can change, let's leave that alone. Because if that is too strong of an idea in the mind, then again we can't look and listen. We want to meddle and change right away. Usually the other person. Change comes from entirely unsuspected quarters, if we want to use that language. It doesn't come out of our will to change. It comes out of attention, the wisdom, and the inbuilt compassion of attention and awareness. Compassion coming with realizing the heaviness, the momentum and strength of thoughts and feelings, to disorient this body-mind, make it confused, encapsulated, insistent, feisty. Realizing in oneself tremendous power of the network, thoughts, emotions. And that same tremendous strength takes place in other people who so annoy us. So often people say, first of all, rather than always having to have compassion with others, I have to be compassionate with myself. What can I do to become compassionate? Of course, there are doings, there are all kinds of compassion meditations that people engage in. But attention is not any engaged meditation. It's there and sheds light and shows the truth of what we are this moment, without finding fault without guilt. Guilt comes from the network. Fault finding is part of the network. Attention just brings it all into the light of day. And one realizes I didn't really do this. It's just all of these thoughts, all of these prejudices. No one doing it. It's operating autonomously, as it were. And even though one can find out in a 10-day retreat better than any other place, I don't want to have these thoughts. So what can you do about it? What can the ego do to get rid of these thoughts? Do we learn wisely the powerlessness of what we thought was my power to control? A lot of people realize that in retreats. The desire to control and the impossibility to do it when one wants it. Because it happens very habitually. But if it wants to change habit, it falters. When there's just attacking it with wanting and will. So, to beware of immediately wanting to do something and to illuminate that as just another one of our deeply conditioned drives. Which doesn't mean, please, I don't want to be misunderstood, that starting from this talk we're never going to do anything anymore. I'm talking right now particularly about meditation, sitting quietly, discovering an interrelationship. There's some interrelationship in retreat. One gets a note, gets riled up at this constant note writer, and can learn. But there's much more in our daily life, in our interrelationship to watch. But not doing doesn't mean to quit going to work, or even loving the doing of it. Often it's so much better than thinking about all I have to do when one finally has the time to get one's hands and body and mind into it. It's fun. Because it's no longer just this piling up of thoughts, what else all I have to do by the time the day is over. It's just the doing. Again, quietly, spaciously. And one will find too in that doing that at its best, there has such richness of help from the total environment when oneself isn't pushing oneself around in such an assertive way. Yesterday, in a group meeting, discussing about separation, feelings of separation, and trying to get at it. What is it really, this felt separation or thought about separation? Because as we said earlier, sometimes it's no clear line where it's just thinking or where it's really something one is experiencing. But the question came up and we looked at it as long as the time permitted. If I have a dislike for you, as we say, our chemistries don't work together very well. I don't want to go out with you. Don't want to associate very much with you. What else was brought up? Liking something, not liking something. Is that already separation? what seemed to be implied in the thinking, which can become very dominating, what seemed to be implied is that this separation means I have to agree with everything and everybody and like everything and everybody. See, that's theoretical or hypothetical. At this moment of not wanting to go with someone because person is excitable or irascible and doesn't function harmoniously with this person right at this time, can that be quite clearly seen as a limitation for oneself? It doesn't need to close up the universe. It doesn't have to enclose in a capsule of isolation. The trees are still trembling, birds are still singing, but limitations we all have physically, pain limitations, nervous limitations, how much the body can take at one time, through intimate in touchness with oneself in relationship, one learns about these things, not emotionally or assertively or defensively, but intelligently, and can respond out of that intelligent awareness of one's limitations. Or how deeply programmed some prejudices lie. One can feel them arise, but it doesn't have to go through into a total self-encapsulation, insisting being right and others being wrong, or superior, inferior, or the hatred that is generated by so much prejudice. Prejudice can be seen, but it doesn't need to arouse hatred. We can test it out best on day 8 of a retreat, evoking someone against whom one feels considerable prejudice, and watching whether the spark flies over into the emotions or remains just with the seeing of prejudice and realization. Maybe it's all right to look at this person again, take a second fresh look. What has imprinted itself into the mind may not have been a permanent feature of that person. Or maybe the way I came on evoked something in him or her that now I think is their sole independent characteristic, but I was part of it, or my presence, my ways, because we're interrelated at all times, whether we know it or not, affecting each other in all kinds of ways. But the mind has this capacity to single it all out and pigeonhole it. You're this, I'm that. To question that when we notice it. And to watch whether we can talk with each other about difficulties we have with each other. Without needing to make a court trial out of it. Watching whether sparks need to fly into emotions like anger or hatred. But it's a very delicate matter because there may already be an image now. I want to be that spacious listener. And now trying to embody that image, which means, again, repression of what's really going on through serving an image. That's not what we're talking about. That's all very delicate. Because the mind is so productive in image making. and adhering to that, because it's easier to adhere to that than to watch real people, which seems dangerous to us. It isn't, but it seems that way. One person also said, I feel separate because I don't know what you feel and what he feels and what everybody in this room feels. I don't know that. That makes me feel separate. We may, or rather most of the time, not feel what other people feel. May feel it, it's possible, but most of the time not, because we're so taken up with our own feelings. And the being taken up with our own feelings is what makes for separation, not the fact that 5 different people have different feelings. Unity and wholeness among each other does not depend on operating on each feeling so that they're all alike. It's the letting be. Letting it be, learning to let other people's feelings be. Not with resignation, but wisdom. And not enclosing in feelings of, I don't know how others feel, therefore, how can I be one with them? Each one at this moment may, in their personalities, feel a bit different. But the quiet, spacious listening of insects and airplanes and crows and breeze and breathing. That needs no feelings. It needs no personality. It needs no story. It's just what's here. Quietly, spaciously. Someone asked me, what if a person in this room was deaf? What about it? Does this awareness need flying, buzzing insects to be there? It needs nothing. needs no objects. Whatever appears, appears, whether it's sight or sound or physical sensation. It's all one whole happening of nothing. We will end here for today.